There's one theory that I have to push back on. I don't think it's true. There's no way Prythian is the whole story. This is my favorite prediction. So I just read all of the ACOTAR books for the first time a couple of months ago. Back to back, no interruptions, and I didn't have like years of fan theories in my head as I was reading these books. I was a complete blank slate going into it. So today I'm going to give you my predictions for book 6, some popular theories I think I might agree with, and one popular fan theory that I absolutely disagree with. I think it would ruin the whole story if it were true. Obviously, spoilers for all of the ACOTAR books through A Court of Silver Flame, so if you're not caught up, save this for later. Let's get into it. So this first section is the macro level observations about where I think this story has to go structurally. These aren't the plot specific theories yet. A lot of people think book 6 is going to be Elain's POV, and I get why. I do think we're going to get Elain's POV, but I don't think hers is the only one. Here's why. Sarah J. Maas did this interview on Call Her Daddy, and she kind of slips.
You can't tell us whose POV it's from.
No, and that was one of the like surprising things for me in like writing this and like what came out of like you get a lot of like insight into like various things. Like it's
Okay.
The way she describes it sounds less like a single protagonist story and more like an ensemble. And when you look at everything that's still unresolved in this series, and there's a lot, I went through it in my last video, I'll link it above. I think there is simply too much ground to cover in just one character's perspective. I can't believe that the Archeron sisters are just normal humans. Something in their bloodline must have made them different. It's odd that Rhys had a mating bond, or like the beginning of a mating bond with a human girl, and that he was able to send her visions while she was still human. Maybe that's not technically impossible given his power. It just seems strange, especially when we know that mating bonds are about balance and complement. It was when the Azriel told Feyre that Rhys was her mate, he said something like, "It makes sense, doesn't it? Here's the most powerful High Lord, and here's this maid Fae who has powers from each of the 7 courts. There's a balance there." Maybe the mating bond takes into account Feyre's destiny in this sense. I don't know. It just seems odd to me that a human girl would be matched up with Rhys, and that Feyre would already be receptive to that kind of magic before she was even made. In the first book, Amarantha says that Feyre's name is very old. It originates from their old dialect, the Fae's old dialect. I don't think that that's a throwaway line. I think Sarah J. Maas is pointing to something about where the Archeron family actually comes from. And then consider what happened when Elain and Nesta were thrown into the cauldron. Both came out with powers, some stolen, some gifted, but they came out completely normal, healthy, powerful Fae. But when Breelyn, the human queen, was thrown in the cauldron, she came out a withered, old, broken Fae. Why were Nesta and Elain different? I think the cauldron recognized something in them, and I think Rhys's magic recognized something in Feyre, something latent in their bloodline. And I think whatever that something is traces back to Mama Archeron. I bet book 6 will reorganize the entire power structure of Prythian. Have you noticed there's an asymmetry to the 7 courts? We have the 4 seasonal courts, and then we have the day court, the night court, and the dawn court. Obviously, the 8th court, the Dusk Court, is missing. So the prison sits on the island where the Dusk Court is rumored to have existed. And when Nesta is in the prison, she senses that people have been trapped in the stone there. Whether or not those people are actually the lost people of the Dusk Court, I think that we're going to find out information about what happened to this court, and I think it's going to have severe political implications for Prythian. In the Spring Court, Tamlin is unraveling. The Spring Court is in disarray. And then we have Elain, who is the embodiment of spring. She loves to grow things. She loves to tend to her garden. Feyre painted her dresser drawer with flowers. So Elain has a lot of spring symbolism going on. I wonder if that means something. If Tamlin is no longer fit to rule, someone has to step into that vacuum. Could it be Elain? At this point, it's pretty much accepted that Lucien is the son of Elain, High Lord of the Day Court, which would make Lucien heir to the Day Court. Lucien has spent the entire series as one of the most displaced characters, and I think that setup has to pay off. And if it pays off in the way I think it will, Lucien is going to go from just being an emissary and having almost no power to being one of the most powerful High Lords in Prythian. In A Court of Silver Flames, Amren throws out the idea that maybe with Rhys's power and with access to the Dead Trove, that Rhys could step into the position as High King and rule over not just the Night Court, but all of Prythian. Her argument is that someone like Rhys could finally unify the disparate courts, finally live in peace, and present a stronger unified front against any of the looming threats to come. Put all 4 of those together and you have a completely different Prythian by the end of book 8, I guess. There's no way Prythian is the whole story. This is my favorite prediction. Think about the beings that we have encountered that don't fit neatly into the Fae world. We have Amren, who came to Prythian through a rift between realms. We have the Death Gods, the Bone Carver, the Weaver, and Koschei. These guys predate the courts entirely. And we have Bryaxis, this mysterious creature who is described as fear itself. The point I want to make is that these are not just powerful creatures in the Fae world. These beings are a different category of existence. And I think Sarah J. Maas has been using them to hint at the fact that Prythian is just one small part of something much larger that we haven't seen, that we don't know about yet. Why else would she weave in these ancient, mysterious, non-Fae creatures into the plot? Say they come from somewhere else, or say they come from very ancient times, and then never follow that thread. Also, one of the Dead Trove items, the harp, gives the player of the harp the ability to open any door, including portals to other realms. So 100% that's going to come into play. It has to. Koschei might be the most underdeveloped villain in the series, and I think it's intentional. He's this death god who is bound to the lake. He's making deals. He's trading in human queens. He's cursed Vasa. He struck an agreement with Elain. And I think he's probably the reason why she had knowledge of and access to the crown from the Dead Trove. I wonder if Koschei has his own need for the items of the Dead Trove. Which raises the question, what does Koschei actually want besides freedom from the lake? And what would happen if he got free? What would it take to free him? I think he will be a huge threat in a way that links to the larger cosmology that I mentioned before. After I finished the series, I went digging for more information about Koschei, and I found out he's actually a figure in old Russian folklore. In the myths, Koschei the Deathless hides his death or his ability to die in these objects that are very hard to find. They might be inside a needle or inside an egg or hidden away on a faraway island. And he can't be killed until someone finds where he's hidden the objects. He's also known for entrapping the hero's love interest. And this maps almost directly to what we have in the series. The Dead Trove. Some of the items from the Dead Trove hidden in the prison, which is on an island. Vasa, who he has cursed and bound to him. I have more about this in the theories section to come. So these are the theories I went looking for after I finished the series. Elain is Lucien's mate. That bond I think we can trust is real. But the books have been quietly making the argument or building the case that a mating bond is not simply destiny. It's more like this physical, biological imperative that has to ultimately be accepted and chosen by the mates. So it's got this component of destiny and free will. And the free will component is what makes it so important. Consider how it's celebratory when one mate makes the other mate a meal. And it's supposed to signify that the mates are choosing the bond. They're choosing each other. It's something that's celebrated. And in order to maintain the importance of the choice that Feyre and Rhys made, for example, the book needs an example of a rejected mating bond. And I think this is what we're getting with Lucien and Elain. I think Elain is going to choose Azriel. There's the whole Hades and Persephone symbolism that the fandom has mapped out pretty thoroughly. Azriel is a shadow singer. He is associated with darkness and shadows. Elain is associated with spring, with flowers, with everything lovely and gentle and good. In the original myth, Persephone is the goddess of spring who descends to the underworld to be with Hades, at least for part of the year. And I don't know. It sounds like a blueprint, and we already know that Sarah J. Maas loves a retelling. Oh, and one more thing. Azriel's shadows retreat and scatter when they're in Elaine's presence. I feel like that has to mean something. I have been going back and forth on this one. Mor's power is described as truth. But what does that actually mean? Is it truth telling? Is it truth perceiving? Is it truth suppression? Does she have the power to prevent information from being shared or retained? It was explained that Valeris is protected by ancient magic and these protective wards to keep it secret and hidden. What if this magic came from, or maybe is sustained by Mor's truth suppression? She's clearly very invested and very attached to this city. She was so dismayed when Rhys bargained with Kier to have access to Valeris. It's her sanctuary, and she saw it as a betrayal. And interestingly, though I don't think Kier ever ended up visiting Valeris yet, Mor was sent away from the city on some other mission for several weeks. Was she sent away so that the truth of Valeris would no longer be suppressed? I don't know. And then there's the issue of Eris knowing something about Mor on the day that she was pretty much left to die or be accepted by the Autumn Court. I wonder if what we learn about Mor is going to make us see Eris as less of a bad guy. I wouldn't be surprised if what Eris knows somehow connects to the nature of Mor's power and what really happened on that day that she was left at the Autumn Court. Another thing I keep on coming back to is Azriel. So Azriel has been very focused on Mor throughout the entire series, and the assumption is that he's secretly in love with her. But what if the reason for his attention is not love, but fear? What if he's monitoring her? It's very interesting that he has his weapon called Truth Teller, and Mor's power is related to truth in some way. So there's a popular theory that there is going to be a betrayal in the inner circle, and a lot of people online think it's going to be Mor. And I really don't want to believe that's true, but I kind of see where they're coming from. I think that Mor's power being truth suppression and the potential for a betrayal in the inner circle might be pulling at the same thread. But I don't really know. There's not a lot of evidence for this theory. It's just more intuition and expecting some crazy twist, right? Now, this theory is different from what I've heard other people talk about online. Most people, when they talk about ACOTAR theories, talk about whether or not Elain's going to end up with Lucien or Azriel or someone else. It's usually about the romantic arcs. But this theory is about Koschei, and I find it really compelling. Based on what we know about the Russian folklore, I think finding all of the items in the Death Trove, including the fourth item, will be necessary in order to defeat Koschei. So the folklore says that Koschei entraps the hero's love interest. We already know that Koschei and ACOTAR has cursed Vasa, but as far as we know, Vasa is no one's love interest. But maybe that changes. Vasa is one of the members of the Band of Exiles. Maybe Vasa becomes Lucien's love interest. Or what if Koschei has his sights set on the inner circle? What if he entraps Elain or Feyre? Regardless, the Band of Exiles, Lucien, Vasa, and Jurian, seem to be at the intersection of every unresolved human-fae tension in this series. Vasa is already directly tied to Koschei, and I think the Band of Exiles are going to be central to how this all resolves. There is one theory that I have to push back on. I don't think it's true. This is a very popular theory, and it's that Rhys is secretly evil. I'm going to tell you why, but I don't buy it, and I think it would absolutely ruin the story if this theory turns out to be true. So let me start with what the theory has going for it. Rhys clearly has the ability to manipulate minds and implant thoughts in people's brains that end up changing their own decisions and actions. He planted the vision of the night sky in Feyre's mind before she even went to the Spring Court, before she was made. That could very well be seen as pushing a domino in a long chain of cause and effect that led the two of them to end up together. His inner circle, similarly, could have also been subjected to mental manipulation. They obviously perceive him as a good guy, as a protector, as someone with honor. But we can't trust their perception if Rhys manipulated them to see him in the positive light that they see him in. Theoretically, he could have orchestrated every event that happened in Prythian leading up to Book 6. Also, he's no stranger to crossing moral boundaries if he thinks the ends justify the means. For example, when he was under the mountain, he followed Amarantha's order to wipe someone's brain. In his mind, the immediate harm becomes the price he has to pay to stay close to power, gather information, and ultimately protect those he loves, and also to survive long enough to help bring her down. The point is, maybe Rhys has other objectives that aren't in the best interests of the other characters that we know and love. Also, it's very curious that in the war against Hybern, Rhys transforms into his beast form. Feyre says his beast form looks like the winged beasts carved into the pillars at Hewn City. At another point in the story, Rhys is explaining to Nesta the history of the Daglins, who were these awful, cruel rulers of Prythian before the Fae were in control. They used these mighty beasts called hounds to hunt down their prey, which was the Fae at the time. And he makes a point to note that the hounds didn't look like dogs. And then in the prison, Lanthus gives Nesta a vision of what it would look like if they ruled together. And in this vision, there are hounds sitting at his feet. And Nesta explicitly states the hounds looked like the beasts in the Hewn City. So that's weird. Does Rhys have a connection to the Daglin? Does the Night Court have a connection to the Daglin? People also pointed out that when Feyre looked into the Ouroboros mirror, she saw something beastly and demonic. She seems to have accepted that was the core of who she was, and she painted a picture of that beast and gave it to Rhys as a present, and Rhys loved it. That's also weird. To be fair, I think the beast was a symbol of the dark parts of her past and some of the awful things that she's had to do to survive. By confronting and accepting the beast, she was confronting and accepting the darkness within her. And I think giving that gift to Rhys was an extension of that acceptance. By saying, this is what's dark and ugly in me, I accept what's dark and ugly in you as well. So that could be taken in different ways, I guess. You could say that Rhys and Feyre are obviously evil because of this, but you can also say that here are two people who have been through a lot and had to do a lot of bad stuff to survive, but who are inherently good. But I don't know, the whole Ouroboros thing didn't really land with me. So, while I think all of these points are interesting, the Rhys is secretly evil theory wouldn't be a plot twist or a reveal. It would undermine the entire story. It's like we've already exhausted the format of a story when it comes to Rhys and Feyre. They found their way to each other. They defeated the King of Hybern. They saved the world from the threat of the fractured cauldron. They both died and were revived. And then their final dream came true of having a baby. It's like we've already seen their happy ending. There's nowhere for a Rhys betrayal to go that doesn't just retroactively damage everything the series built. The triumph of good over evil, that was the war with Hybern. Friendship, found family, connections with others that were capable of pulling people from rock bottom. Feyre's epic hero's journey. I just don't see a way for there to be a Rhys betrayal without betraying the entire story. But maybe there is some truth to the theory in that we don't know the whole story about Rhys, and there's something about his past and history that is going to shed new light on everything. What I keep coming back to is this. Sarah J. Maas has been building something, and book 6 is going to have to do a lot of work. I can't wait for these books to come out. Now, I really want to hear from you, especially from people who have been in this fandom for a lot longer than I have. I'm clearly very new. Which of these theories or predictions do you think that I got right? What do you think is completely wrong? Is there something I didn't mention that deserves a mention? Leave it in the comments. But as you may have already guessed, I haven't yet finished Throne of Glass or Crescent City, so I know there's crossover, but don't include any spoilers for those series in the comments, please. All right, thanks so much for watching. Please subscribe for more ACOTAR videos, and I'll see you in the next one.